Welcome back. We are on day 39 of this war, and today the President of the United States wrote 7 words on Truth Social that I want to read to you exactly as he wrote them before anything else. A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. 7 words. Posted 12 hours before his 8 p.m. deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz or face the destruction of its power plants, bridges, and water treatment facilities. And then he added, I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. Let's fact-check every dimension of this statement because it is the most consequential single sentence any American president has written about a foreign country in living memory, and it deserves the full treatment. First, what is the civilization being threatened? Iran is the heir to the millennia-old Persian civilization, one of the most influential in human history. CNN. The Persian Empire invented the first postal system, the first human rights declaration, the first paved roads, the first administrative bureaucracy managing a multi-ethnic population. Iran's civilization is older than Rome. It is older than Christianity. It is older than Islam. When Trump says a whole civilization will die tonight, he is describing the complete destruction of a human cultural tradition that predates the United States by approximately 5,800 years. The University of Oxford professor, who told Al Jazeera last week that such threats constitute an announcement of systematic and serious violations of long-standing laws of war, was describing exactly this framing. This is not a threat against a regime. This is a threat against a people and their entire historical existence. Second, is this legal? NPR's reporting is precise. Wide-scale destruction of infrastructure without distinction between civilian and military objects would be considered a war crime under international and U.S. law. CBS News. Not just international law, U.S. law. The Uniform Code of Military Justice, which every American service member is bound by, prohibits participation in attacks on civilian objects, regardless of the order given. Iran's UN representative Amir Saeed Iravani told the Security Council that Trump's threats constitute incitement to war crimes and potentially genocide. Not potentially, those were his exact words. Incitement to war crimes and potentially genocide. Iran's UN representative used the word genocide in the Security Council in reference to the President of the United States. Third, is this the first deadline? No, and that fact matters enormously for evaluating what tonight's deadline means. Trump has made similar ultimatums on several occasions in recent weeks, delaying the deadline each time. He initially threatened to strike power plants within 48 hours, then extended it to 5 days, then 10 more days. To April 6th, CBS News, 3 deadlines, 3 extensions. Tonight is the 3rd or 4th version of a deadline Trump has already extended twice. The White House press secretary said, only the president knows what he will do. That is the official American government's position on whether the deadline will be kept. They do not know either. Now, let's look at what is actually happening on the ground 12 hours before that deadline, because the military picture is accelerating regardless of diplomacy. Airstrikes hit 2 bridges and a train station, and the U.S. hit military infrastructure on Kharg Island. It was the second time American forces struck the island, a key hub for Iranian oil production. The Israeli military said it attacked an Iranian petrochemical site in Shiraz the second day in a row it hit such a facility. The military later said it also struck bridges in Tehran, Karaj, Tabriz, Kashan, and Qom that were being used by Iranian forces to transport weapons and military equipment. Bloomberg bridges in Tehran, Karaj, Tabriz, Kashan, and Qom. 5 cities. Bridges. In a single wave of strikes on the day of the deadline, bridges are civilian infrastructure. They carry food, medicine, people, commerce. They are also used by military vehicles. The line between military necessity and collective punishment in bridge targeting is the subject of significant legal dispute, and the Israeli military's own justification that they were being used to transport weapons is a standard that has been applied so broadly in this conflict that it has encompassed schools, hospitals, and now a train station. Meanwhile, ordinary Iranians responded to Trump's power plant threat in a way that deserves to be reported directly. Iranian state media showed people forming human chains around at least 2 power plants, heeding the instruction of an Iranian minister. Bloomberg. Human chains around power plants, Iranian civilians placing their bodies between Trump's threatened strikes and the facilities that generate their electricity, pump their water, and keep their hospitals running. Whatever one's view of the Iranian government, the image of civilians forming human chains around power plants to protect them from promised American destruction is a moral and political fact that the world's media is processing in real time. The EIA sharply raised its oil, gasoline, and diesel price forecasts for 2026 and 2027. The agency now expects gas prices to peak at $4.30 a gallon this month. The war has caused Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Bahrain to collectively shut in an estimated 7.5 million barrels per day of crude oil production in March, with this historic supply disruption expected to rise to 9.1 million barrels per day this month. The EIA assumes in its outlook that the war does not last past April. CBS News. The U.S. Energy Information Administration assumes the war ends this month. That is the assumption built into America's own government energy forecasts. If that assumption is wrong, if the war continues into May, every projection in those forecasts becomes invalid, and the upward price pressure continues beyond what any current model accounts for. Kuwait's Interior Ministry urged citizens and residents to stay home from midnight to 6 a.m. local time as a precautionary measure, saying the decision was made in light of the current conditions facing the country and the region. CBS News. Kuwait, a country of over 4 million people, told to stay home from midnight because the American president set an 8 p.m. Eastern Time deadline after which he threatened to destroy an entire civilization. The ripple effects of that midnight deadline are being felt physically in Kuwaiti homes right now. Parents putting children to bed early, families canceling plans, a country holding its breath. Pakistan's foreign minister told lawmakers he was very hopeful for the prospect of U.S.-Iranian peace talks, but recent dangerous developments have dealt a serious blow to peace efforts. Mediators from Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are racing against time to reach a compromise before the deadline. An official said Iran has linked the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz to sanctions relief, and the U.S. was open to easing some sanctions, especially on Iran's oil sector, in part to stabilize the global oil market. CBS News racing against time. That is the phrase the mediators are using. Not working through normal diplomatic channels, racing against a self-imposed deadline that has already been extended twice, and that the White House's own press secretary says only the president knows what will happen at. There are two developments from today that deserve specific fact-checking because they are being reported in contradictory ways across different news organizations. First, Vice President J.D. Vance said in Budapest, where he was supporting Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's re-election campaign, that the United States has tools in our toolkit that we so far have not decided to use against Iran. What tools? Nuclear weapons are in America's toolkit. Biological agents are in America's toolkit. Chemical weapons used to be in America's toolkit. When a vice president references unspecified tools that have not yet been deployed, in the context of a president who has just threatened to destroy an entire civilization, the vagueness of that phrasing requires the closest possible scrutiny. Second, a U.S. fighter jet was reported shot down over Iran with one crew member rescued. That report requires independent verification and has not been confirmed by CENTCOM at the time of our production. We report it as a developing claim pending official confirmation. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer called Trump an extremely sick person after the civilization will die post. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries called on Republicans to put patriotic duty over party and stop the madness. Congressman Jim McGovern said the president's genocidal threat to commit war crimes is illegal under federal and international law. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib called for the 25th Amendment to be invoked to remove Trump from office. CBS News. Extremely sick person, stop the madness, genocidal, illegal under federal law, World War III, 25th Amendment. Those are the words being used by the leaders of the opposition party in both chambers of Congress today. They are not fringe voices. They are the Senate Minority Leader and the House Minority Leader. They are calling on military personnel to disobey illegal orders, and they are questioning the president's mental fitness for office. Whether those characterizations are accurate is a political judgment. That they were made by named senior elected officials is a documented fact. Republican Congressman Mike Lawler tried to navigate the contradiction by saying Trump would only target civilian infrastructure, and then acknowledging that targeting civilian infrastructure violates international humanitarian law. Both halves of that statement appeared in a single CNN interview. He said it apparently without recognizing the logical contradiction he had created. Trump is staying within his legal authorities was the Republican position on a plan to destroy civilian infrastructure that its own defenders acknowledge violates international humanitarian law. Here is where the facts leave us. 8 p.m. Eastern tonight is the deadline. 7 Words on Truth Social said a whole civilization will die. Multiple legal experts, Iran's UN ambassador, and named members of Congress have called this a war crime or genocide. 3 deadlines have already been extended. Kuwait is under a midnight to 6 a.m. curfew. Iranians are forming human chains around power plants. Bridges in 5 Iranian cities struck today. Kharg Island struck for the second time. Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are racing to broker something before 8 p.m. Vance referenced unused tools in America's toolkit. A U.S. fighter may have been shot down. Gas is $4.14 a gallon. The EIA assumes this war ends this month. And Trump wrote, maybe something revolutionarily wonderful can happen. Maybe something revolutionarily wonderful. That is the alternative the President of the United States offered to the destruction of a civilization tonight. We will be watching. We will keep verifying. We will be here at 8:01 p.m. and at midnight and through whatever comes next. Stay with us.